The death of another New York City child putting renewed pressure on the administration of child services. We'll speak with someone who's partners with the agency and ask him why this keeps happening. Then we will pivot to politics and take a look at the highlights from President Obama's last news conference of the year and perhaps of his presidency. Also, while everyone is focusing on the Russian hack and possible conflicts of interest, there are a whole lot of other disturbing things going on with Team Trump that you may have missed. Tonight, we fill you in. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French. We're going to start tonight with a story that we've been following. The problems at New York City's Administration of Children and Family Services, or known more commonly as ACS. The agency, it's under fire after the death of a child. Now I'm talking about 6-year-old Zamir Perkins. The coroner ruled it a homicide. Police say Zamir's mother and her boyfriend repeatedly abused the child in their Harlem home. They also say the household was investigated 5 separate times for abuse allegations, but the child remained there. Zamir's death is just the latest tragedy. Another horror story, 3-year-old Jaden Jordan. Police found him unconscious and covered in feces in his Brooklyn home last month. He died soon after, and the hospital says he was horrifically abused. The New York Times explains how the ACS handled the Jaden case. Quote, 48 hours before the child was injured, social workers investigating an anonymous child abuse complaint rang the doorbell at the home, but received no answer. The workers had been given the wrong address, but they returned on Sunday, knocking on doors and asking neighbors for information. City officials said they returned again late Monday, but by then they were too late. Here is GLADYS CARRIÓN, who just stepped down as the head of the agency, breaking down in a city council hearing last month.
Losing a child is unbearable, and it's my responsibility, and one that I take seriously.
Now, the state has ordered Mayor Bill de Blasio to appoint a monitor to oversee the troubled agency. On de Blasio's weekly radio call-in show today, he was asked about what's going on.
Our mission is to save every child. You know, Brian, unlike pretty much any other area in government, we do not set a standard of perfection in policing or so many other areas. In this case, we do set a standard of perfection. Our mission is to save every single child. And what happened here shouldn't have happened. And there have been immediately consequences for those who were directly involved. Some have been terminated, some have been demoted.
The City Council held yet another hearing about the ACS this week, and my first guest tonight, he testified before them. Jess DANNHAUSER is president and CEO of WINDHAM. That's a child welfare agency that partners with the ACS. Jess, thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, we all agree the horrors that happened to that poor child and other tragedies that happened before that, completely unacceptable. But what I wanted to get from you is the reality of both the situation and also the job. Give an idea to people how many cases typically a caseworker handles, what it entails, and what do they go when they actually go to a visit, what do they have with them?
Our preventive staff, which is most akin to child protection, have about 12 cases. In every case, they're going out to meet the family, to really understand what is going on, to look at the history that's gone on in this family, both the child protective history, and really understand whether this child is safe or not. They go into some of the most complex situations, dangerous situations sometimes, armed with a phone and a pen. And their job is to really understand the dynamics that are going on in this family and the threats to the child, and whether this family has the capacity to protect the children from those threats. And so they dig in deep, and I think one of the most important things for your viewers to understand is the very best investigative tool that we have is a trusting relationship with the child, with the parent. And in many of these cases that we see, we often ask, what didn't we know, right? And that's the key question that we're always asking our staff to look at. What might we not know that we need to know in order to protect this child?
When people see these stories, and I'm sure you must think yourself sometimes, somebody will go to, they're not going to some hoity-toity suburbs here. They're usually going to an impoverished area in a bad situation already that's complicated, and you're talking about the welfare of a child. When somebody goes to a place 5, 6 times where clearly, just to the naked eye, this is not a healthy situation, help me out with where's that line between, you know what, this is bad, but the alternative could even be worse if I stick them in foster care or whatever else, or I'm going to give them another shot, or just no way. I can't in good conscience leave this apartment and leave this kid behind with these two or with this one parent. Where's that line?
So, Richard, there's no clear line, but here's the line. Every child deserves to be safe. Every child deserves to be protected. There are many ways to protect children. In all of these cases, maybe an aunt could have been called in, maybe an uncle could have been called in. Maybe there's someone else in this child's life that could protect the child. Maybe foster care is the right decision in this case. But we also need to know that about 90% of the families we work with, they're working hard, they're struggling to make ends meet, they are well-intentioned parents, and when you help them and give them the respect and support and technique that they need, they typically protect their children extremely well. So many situations that look precarious can turn out really well and save the child a trauma from separation.
Help me with the math and the reality, which is, I know you're only supposed to have 12 cases per caseworker. First off, is that always the case? And secondly, if somebody's going into an apartment with a phone and a pen, and you're talking about going into an environment by definition that may be unsafe potentially, and theoretically you could be taking a kid away from the parent, I would imagine there is a lot, potentially a threat of not only violence here, but certainly something that could boil over. Do these people need security they're not getting when they're going there? Because we're learning sometimes they'll check the box if they want it, when in reality they never even step foot inside the apartment.
So as the mayor said, Richard, our mission is to protect every single child, right? And so we need to continue as a city, not only to blame the caseworkers, but to invest in them. To lower caseloads even further, I think, is absolutely right, particularly in preventive services, where typically you're in the home just twice a month. We need to invest in those workers. We need to invest in security. As an agency, we look to see, are our staff protected? We look at when we need to, we try to double them up, but we don't have the resources to send them out with somebody else every single time.
Let's talk about the quality of the caseworkers. I'm sure you saw the story in the Post this week. A guy who's got a rap sheet can't get a job as a corrections officer, but he gets a job as a caseworker to look out for the welfare of children. And again, on his rap sheet are cases of domestic abuse. Do we have the right people doing this job? We already said, in a polite way, we're not paying them enough, and we're probably not giving enough security, but do we also have the wrong people, arguably with the most sensitive and important of jobs when we're talking about the welfare of a vulnerable child?
I will tell you that however that happened, that someone with that rap sheet got into this work has to be fixed immediately. At our organization, we have at least 8 types of background checks that we do on every employee that comes in. Our kids' lives are sacred, and no matter what neighborhood they live in, and we have to protect them, and we can't be allowing people who could possibly hurt children near them.
All right, just finally, and this is an open appeal for you here, and you don't even have to be polite the way you put this. I'm getting it that you could do a better job, and caseworkers in the front lines could do a better job if there was more of an investment, and maybe the caseloads that these folks have, let alone all the paperwork they got to fill out, we could do a better job if we invested more in it. Are you saying the safety of kids under this system would be improved if we put more money into it?
Every single day we learn something new. Right now, I think absolutely we could put more money into preventive services. I don't know enough about the child protective caseloads to speak on that, but I know they're extraordinary people with a lot of work. I think the documentation burden that we've put on staff between across the board, child protection, preventive, foster care, they are spending 40% or more of their time writing things down because we want to make sure they're doing exactly what they need to be doing. We should give them a little bit more trust and make sure that we're focused on exactly the mission, which is to protect every child, to support every family, and to make sure every child has a safety plan that is going to protect her.
And you support this monitor that's going to be put in place here to basically put some oversight on the city, since clearly they dropped the ball here.
I don't know that a monitor is going to change that. I'm not opposed to it, but if it takes any resources that could be going to the front line, I'd vote for putting them on the front line.
Jess, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, everyone, when we come back, President Obama today gave his end-of-year news conference and what he had to say about the new administration that's getting ready to move into the White House. We'll have that after this.